All right, welcome. Today, we're going to talk about something that could totally flip the script on how we eat, how we live, and even how we build our cities. And get this, it's a revolution that's not happening in the dirt, but in the air.
So it really all kicks off with this one massive number, 70%. That's how much of the entire world's freshwater we're using for agriculture right now. Just think about that. We're literally pouring our most vital resource onto fields. With droughts and water shortages becoming more and more common, you can see that's just not going to work long term.
Yeah, and this quote, it just nails it. The way we've been doing things for centuries, well, it's hitting a wall. A very dry wall. But what if the solution isn't about finding more water for the soil? What if we just got rid of the soil altogether?
Okay, so here's what we're going to cover. First up, the big problem, our planet's thirst. Then we'll jump into the solution, what we're calling the mist revolution. After that, we'll uncover the secret to its crazy fast growth, see how it turns skyscrapers into actual farms, and finally, we'll talk dollars and cents, the high-tech price tag.
All right, so let's really set the stage here. For like 10,000 years, farming has been pretty simple, right? You put a seed in the ground, you add water, done. The problem is, our population is just skyrocketing, and our water, well, that's not. We're staring down the barrel of a major crisis with soil-based farming.
And this is the key takeaway. The solution isn't a small tweak. We need a completely new playbook, a total rethink of how a plant gets everything it needs to grow. And that big idea, it takes us from the ground floor, literally, up into the air.
Which brings us right to the star of this show, the mist revolution. And the engine behind it is a technology called aeroponics. Now, this isn't just a little upgrade, this is a whole new way of thinking about where our food comes from. So, you're probably wondering, what on earth is aeroponics? Well, it's pretty simple in concept. It's growing plants in the air with a nutrient mist and absolutely no soil. I'm serious, the roots just dangle in the open air. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, I know, but trust me, it's happening right now.
Okay, now we get to the really fun stuff. How does this even work? What's the secret sauce that lets these plants not just live, but actually grow like crazy in what's basically a nutrient-packed fog?
Now, you've probably heard of hydroponics, right? That's where plant roots sit in water. Aeroponics is kind of like its high-tech cousin. It takes it one giant leap forward. Instead of a pool of water, the roots are in, well, nothing, just air. And every so often, they get a spritz of this super fine mist. And that one little change, it changes everything.
Let's walk through it. It's actually pretty elegant. First, imagine the roots just hanging there inside a sealed-off, dark box. Then, like clockwork, these special nozzles blast out a fog packed with nutrients. This mist perfectly coats the roots, giving the plant exactly what it wants, right when it wants it. No waste.
And this is where the precision engineering comes in. The size of that mist droplet is absolutely critical. If it's too big, the roots can't breathe. Too small, and they don't get enough food. The sweet spot, the Goldilocks size, is around 20 microns. That is so incredibly fine, it's almost like a gas, and it just perfectly blankets the entire root system.
So what do you get for all that high-tech misting? How about plants that grow 2.5 times faster than in soil? Yep, 2.5x. And the reason is simple, oxygen. See, in soil, roots are constantly struggling to get enough air. In an aeroponic chamber, they're surrounded by it. They get all the oxygen they could ever want 24/7, and it just puts their growth into hyperdrive.
Okay, so that's the micro level, the science of the root. Pretty cool, right? But now, let's zoom all the way out. Let's talk about how this tech isn't just about one plant, but how it could reshape our entire cities by turning skyscrapers into massive vertical farms.
And this visual just says it all, doesn't it? The efficiency is mind-boggling. Because you can stack these farms upwards, one single acre of a building's footprint can grow the same amount of food as a sprawling 100-acre traditional farm. I mean, just let that sink in. That's not just an improvement, that's a game changer.
And then there's this. Think about the lettuce you bought last week. On average, it traveled 1,500 miles to get to you. 1,500 miles! That's a ton of fuel, a ton of emissions. Now imagine a farm right downtown. That journey shrinks from thousands of miles to maybe a few blocks. Your salad could be delivered by bike, just hours after it was picked.
And of course, we gotta circle back to water. It's just too important.
Because these systems are completely sealed, they're closed loop. Almost no water is wasted. The only water that leaves is the stuff that actually becomes part of the plant. The result? A jaw-dropping 99% less water use compared to a regular farm. 99%.
But wait, there's more. The benefits just keep coming. When you bring the farm inside into a totally controlled space, you get rid of bugs and pests. That means you can say goodbye to pesticides and herbicides. And since all the nutrient water is reused, none of that fertilizer runoff ends up polluting our streams and rivers. You get total 100% control.
This quote just captures it perfectly. We're moving away from farming that depends on the weather and into farming that depends on algorithms. Instead of worrying about sun and rain, these farms use special LED light recipes and computer programs to create the absolute perfect day for a plant every single day. They can even tweak the light to make kale healthier or your basil taste even better. It's incredible.
Okay, so at this point, I know what you're thinking, because I was thinking it too. If this is so great, why aren't these farm scrapers on every corner? Well, that's a great question, and it brings us to a much-needed reality check, the price tag.
The bottom line is, the single biggest roadblock is the huge upfront cost. Let's be real, this is not a cheap setup. The amount of money you need to spend on the lights, the sensors, the robots, the HVAC is just massive. We're talking a very high capital expenditure, or CapEx.
So it really boils down to this big trade-off. A traditional farm gets free sunlight and hopefully free rain. A vertical farm swaps those free things for high-tech stuff that costs a lot of money and uses a lot of energy. You're basically trading a massive energy bill for massive water savings. But here's the thing. Renewable energy is getting cheaper by the day, and water is only getting more expensive. So that tipping point where the math really starts to work out, we're getting closer to it fast.
And that kind of leaves us with a final, pretty wild thought to chew on. What this technology is really about is creating perfect, self-contained little worlds for plants completely cut off from the outside. So if we can perfect growing food in a sealed box in the middle of a city, what's stopping us from taking that same box, that same technology, and using it to feed the first colonists on Mars? Just a thought.